You know what? I surprisingly really liked the Mulan live action remake. What? Like most people, my hype levels for this movie were extremely low. When I first saw the trailers and I first got the news that they were trying to make it more about the original Chinese legend and not the animated movie, I was like, okay, that makes it unique.
Do you know why the phoenix sits on the right hand of the emperor? She is his guardian, his protector.
Because I don't like it when they try to too hard to remake the movie, the Disney classics shot for shot. I'm not a fan of that, and therefore I don't have a high opinion of Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King. Those live action remakes. Lion King is technically not a live action remake. It's still pretty much all animation. Jungle Book was much better because even though a lot of it was still similar to the original animated classic, it still went ahead and went out of its way to try and forge its own identity. And this is what Mulan is doing and why I like it so much. But again, going back to my initial hype levels for this movie, I didn't like that, first of all, they removed all the songs. This is a fact. I don't think it's a spoiler to say it as much anymore that this movie is not a musical at all. No one pauses to sing to the audience at any one point. The soldiers never break into dance during their combat exercises. I was not a fan of that at first. And yes, it is confirmed that Mushu and Cricket are absolutely not in the movie, but they are homaged. If you are very familiar with Mushu and Cricket from the original animated movie classic, you will recognize the homages to them in this movie. So I was not a fan of these things, but after seeing the movie, these decisions actually work because what Disney was trying to do here is take what they did with Jungle Book and try to make it forge its own identity, still bearing a lot of similarities to the original animated classic of Jungle Book, but again, has its own identity. And it does the same here, but a step further, because again, there's no Mushu, there's no Cricket, and there's no musicals, there's no dancing. The base story is pretty much exactly the same as the original animated classic. Mulan takes the place of her elderly father to fight in the war against the invading force, and it still follows much of the major beats from the animated classic, but almost all of the details are very different. This feels more actually like a sequel to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon than it does a remake of Mulan. It feels more like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon movie with similarities to the Mulan animated classic, if you get what I mean. And I love it for that. Like, another reason why I really like this movie is I am a huge fan of. I mean, I am the Asian action actor. These sorts of movies are one of the reasons I made this my job. You know, I'm an actor that specializes in action filmmaking, classic kung fu movies in the vein of Bruce Lee, Jet Li, and two of the classics in this genre, Donnie Yen and Jet Li, are included in this movie. And that's like another reason why I really like this movie, because just seeing these two in these roles is just amazing for me, and I love it.
Crush these murderers,
Your Majesty.
And it actually does feel like a well done Chinese kung fu movie. And there's a pretty good mix of action. Of course, like if you are familiar with the Mulan animated classic, there are big army sequences of big groups fighting one another. So there's a wide range of action, and all of it is spectacularly done. And I am a huge fan of action cinema. And pretty much all of the action in this movie is amazing. I can't find a single fault in the action and the execution of the action, in the choreography and things like that. And so that is a huge reason why this movie just like won me over completely. Visually, this movie is amazing.
Loyal. Brave. True.
Aside from the action, the cinematography, like the sets, the costumes, and the landscapes that they use for this movie are brilliant to behold. They are beautiful, and they just boggle the mind, like how wondrous these locations that they're using in this movie are. I believe they use some relocations and some are just CG, but that's fine. Either way, they're amazing to look at. One thing also that I love is that they created more depth to the villains of this movie.
Their leader calls himself Oricon.
Fights alongside a witch.
No survivors.
Versus like in the original movie, yes, Shan Yu, the villain of the original Mulan animated movie, was menacing and threatening and all of this, but that was it. He was just a bad guy that wanted to kill the emperor and make himself the new emperor. There are two main villains in this one. Both of them are extremely well executed, in my opinion. One of them is Bori Khan, played by Jason Scott Lee, who you may know from Dragon of Bruce Lee's story and Time Cop 2 from back in the day, and Zhan Ning, played by Gong Li. Bori Khan is like the Shan Yu, is essentially Shan Yu 2020, right? But he has way more depth to his character because he has a more complex backstory and a deeper reason for why he wants to kill the emperor and replace him. So he's not just some dude that is evil and wants power and things like that.
When we take the Imperial City, I will take revenge.
For my father.
And Zhan Ning is a brand new character that is not at all in the original Mulan animated movie. And I love her story arc in this movie. She mirrors Mulan's journey of trying to hide who she is, but her story took her on an evil path, and therefore she's part of the invading force. And when these two characters, Mulan and Zhan Ning, encounter each other, the story becomes very original because, again, Zhan Ning is not in the original Mulan at all, and just heightens the story. This version of the story, in my opinion, even more.
When they find out who you are, they will show you no mercy.
So it allows it to have its own legs and stand on its own and not totally depend on the original animated movie, unlike, again, like movies that I kind of dislike, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King, those remakes that I feel were just unnecessary, expensive remakes. They were nice the one time I watched each, but then I'm like, after watching them, and even before watching them, I'm like, why? And this one answers why, because it has a new spin on the story to tell. It takes this base story of Mulan and all of this and creates a new identity for it and gives you a reason to actually watch it because it's not the same as the original. And it works, in my opinion. It is very well executed, but it's not all perfect. It's not a perfect 10. Spoiler for this review. Mulan herself is very dull.
I'm Hua Mulan. I will bring honor to us all.
Yes, her story is very well told, especially with the addition of Zhan Ning, but the character herself is pretty dull. You kind of get tired of her sort of sad / frowny face because it's pretty much her only expression throughout the whole movie. She's sort of monotone in everything that she does, in how she speaks, in how she moves, and in how she looks, like her facial expressions and all of that. So she's not the most interesting main character. Thankfully, though, the other characters around her are way more interesting. The story that is occurring around her is extremely good. The action that is taking place is fantastic. Everything is just straight up beautiful, and I appreciate that they tried their hardest to make this a legit remake and not just a live action, unnecessarily expensive shot for shot remake of the original. And therefore, I give it an 8 out of 10. If you have an open mind enough to not mind the stuff that they didn't include, specifically the musical dance stuff and Mushu and cricket and all of this, and just watch this version of the movie for what it is, I highly recommend you do because I thought it was great. What did you guys think? The movie's been out for like, I believe a week now from the posting of this review. A lot of you have probably seen it as well. Did you like the Mulan 2020 remake? Did you still hate it? Let me know down in the comments and we can talk about it. And this has been Asian Action Actor. If you like my review of the Mulan 2020 remake, please click like down below and subscribe to see more of my awesome content. And while you're here, you might want to see the other movie reviews that I have already done on my channel.